Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
When we were in the throes of the pandemic, the question that was always thrown around or asked, when's the pandemic going to end? Everyone had their speculation on it. And in fact, I sat down and I did a spreadsheet because we had to get to herd immunity and how many people were getting it, or the vaccine wasn't out at this point. So many people were getting it every day. And I had it figured out that it was Christmas 2021, right around that time frame, we'd have herd immunity and everybody would be fine. Obviously, I was dead wrong. Nobody knew. There were variants, so on and so forth. But the point, the question, when is it going to end? And my answer in hindsight is never. Because what the pandemic did, the lockdown did, is it changed us in many great ways. Certainly many bad ways. There were people who lost their businesses, people who were, people lost their lives. So I'm not going to be Pollyannic about this. But there were a lot of great ways that this changed us, and we're not going back. When's it going to be business as usual? It's not going to be business as usual. We're in a different phase. Today's guest, Jenny Eriksson, is coming to us from Norway. See, that underscores it. I would never have met her. She's from the UK, but she's in Norway with her family. And she's the co-founder of Event Raptor, which is a virtual event management business. And clearly that was, I don't want to say born out of the pandemic, but certainly a part of it. And she's got other businesses as well. We'll talk about. But Jenny, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for having me. Yes, indeed. If we hadn't had online, then we possibly wouldn't have met. That would have been disappointing, huh?
Well, yeah. No, I think that's if I could do an inventory of all the people that I have met in the last couple of years and how many of them are what I'll call hyper local, within 30 miles of where I'm at, and how many are outside of that, it's probably 50 to 1 people being outside of that. I mean, it's people are, hey, you're going to go to this event in town? Nah, not really. I'm doing things online. I'm meeting people, interesting people. I'm learning things. This is great. So, anyhow, you heard my little lead in there. Kind of give us the story of, I guess your backstory, what you do. I know from you shared with me when we originally met that you do voiceover work. I certainly want to hear about all of that. But then how Event Raptor kind of came into being.
I'll give you a quick potted history then, if I may. So yes, as a voiceover, I have spent a number of years sitting in a small dark room talking to myself, which is far more fun than it sounds. So if you like, before the global interrupters, as I like to call it, happened, both my husband and I were working virtually. He was actually working for a motivational speaker who certifies life coaches in the US from Norway. And I've had the privilege of working for, must be about 70 countries now as a voiceover. And because of technology, it means that I can, it used to be in the good old days that you had to, go to the studio, step into the studio, but technology has afforded us the opportunity to be able to work online. So we were both doing that. I could work with clients in the US or wherever it may be, and we could just connect. They could listen in to me as I'm recording, and you can say that line a bit quicker, or can we add this or whatever. So we were already, if you like, well into working with people virtually. And up until 2020, that's what my husband was, head of technology for the company, and we'd very much wanted to do our own thing. Both our children were overseas. We had our son in Dubai, our daughter in Australia. So because of what we did, we wanted to be digital nomads. this lovely idea that we could work from anywhere and then, swing by, surprise to our children, here we are, we've dropped in on you, was super appealing. And then, of course, a pandemic showed up and changed things. And of course, as you quite rightly say, we can't ignore the fact that, so much happened. People reevaluated their lives. We lost lives. It was a huge interrupt. But out of there, it gave people the ability to rethink what they were doing. And certainly for us, we couldn't travel, but we very much wanted to work with people globally. So we know, should I say, that when you speak about what you do, when you're able to teach what you do, when you're more visible in what you do, then you can connect with so many more people. And through that, virtual events is very much a way of doing that. So we wanted to run our own virtual events. And when you run a virtual event, there are an awful lot of moving parts. It's a bit like herding kittens. You've got landing pages and speaker bios, and when are you going to do it? And all those moving parts that take people a long time to do. And so by running our own events, we wanted to find something on the market that would help us make it simpler to do so. And we couldn't find something that, if you like, checked the boxes of what we wanted it to do. And certainly not because, we literally made ourselves a startup, if you like. We certainly not at a price point that worked for us. And my husband, in our house, we lovingly call him Mr. Automation. If you can automate something, then he will. And so he put together our own system. So we very quickly had a couple of events. We had 27 speakers over 3 days, and we had 37 over 5 days. And both events went super, super well using the system that we had created. And whilst we were getting so much feedback that people said, love the speakers, that was really cool, great topics, etc., the overriding thing that happened was, but how did you do the thing? Because I knew when Frank was speaking, I knew what time, all the links, everything. How did you do that? And that was Event Raptor before it was Event Raptor. So people were saying, I would love to use that. If you created it, I would buy it. So we thought, do we carry on with what we're doing, or do we actually create it? And it wasn't ready. It wasn't ready for somebody else to use. And so we said, well, full disclosure, it's not ready. But if you wanted to, we would create a lifetime deal. The money from that we would plow into the development. And then at some stage, once it was ready, it would move over to a monthly subscription. And that's exactly what we did. So we kind of adjusted what we were doing and created Event Raptor for other people to use, because there's nothing better than helping people be autonomous in what they do, and being able to run their own events. And, fast forward to today, we'll help people run their events if they want us, but essentially it was created to empower other people to run their events. And actually, one of our very first clients was a lady in her 70s, and she said, I want to run my own event. I don't want you to do it with me, but these are things I feel are challenging. So she was great in actually helping us figure out what some of the challenges might be in helping people, because that nasty 4-letter word is actually tech. People want to do something, but, oh no, there's tech. And I'd like to do it, but then, oh, it's tech. So we wanted to be able to get past that. And so that's essentially what we did. I still do voiceover work. I was recording just before you and I are chatting now, but essentially we wanted to help people navigate the online world, the global community, which both you and I know we now have an amazing opportunity to teach and educate and connect worldwide with people. And if we can play our small part in doing that, then why wouldn't we?
Yeah, I mean, it's I could go on and on with stories about people who have taken advantage of the situation. It's inspiring in many respects. Certainly that 4-letter word tech that's something I've just decided I don't want to be that old curmudgeon that I write my letters, and I do. I write handwritten notes, but I just need to lean into tech. I've committed to myself that I'm going to look into Event Raptor, because we do a couple events, and I need to look at it. I think things are changing quickly in the world, and we need to take advantage of things and then be able to say, okay, there's that's a learning curve I need to climb, or that's a learning curve I don't need to climb for whatever reason. Maybe it's not ready yet to be climbed, or maybe there's a better one, a similar learning curve that need to climb. There's a lot to it. What are you seeing out there with respect to networking and the online events, and what are some of the challenges that you're facing with respect to putting those things on versus what you saw in, I guess, pre-pandemic sort of networking or events?
Yeah, I guess, well, up until we created Event Raptor, actually, I wasn't going to too many virtual events. And when you and I have hung out together before, I mean, I've loved networking for well over 20 years. In years gone by, when I used to go to in-person events, I was the person that did that. Holding out the business card and trying to sort of balance a cup of tea and hand over all that disastrous stuff. So for me, online networking far exceeds in person, personally, because it means I can own my space, so to speak. Now, I think that there is potential for both. And I think what the pandemic, if you like, has shown us is that we can do both. What we've added now is a whole new way of doing things. We can have big events in person. We can have big events online. We can network in person. We can network online. What have I noticed? I've noticed that this is an amazing opportunity to demonstrate to people that often something perhaps they hadn't thought was possible out of their own local community, if you like, is indeed possible. And sometimes for people that's almost too scary. But for example, let me backtrack a little. We had our own event last year called Own Your Stage, and we literally ran the same event last week. We have it twice a year. And from there, we actually created our own networking meeting. One of the bonuses we gave people who came along to the event was, we'll have a bit of a networking meeting. People who are speakers, people who run events, we'll have a bit of a networking meeting. And from there, our networking event came, which is called Speaker Connections. And very much we talk about, and this is true for conventional networking as much as it is for ours, the specificity is everything. Be very specific and be very laser focused about what it is, who you serve, who you help, who you support. Be very specific with your messaging. And for our event, we very much say, whilst we'd love everybody to come along, this is really for speakers and event organizers to come along. So we say to people, anybody who is a speaker, come along, and anybody who is an event organizer, come along. And that's not just Event Raptor clients, that's somebody who runs a podcast, somebody who, does regular interviews on StreamYard, people, anybody who perhaps interviews or has a particular event. And in the spirit of helping and supporting each other, we help people find more places to speak, and also event organizers more people and guests for their particular events. And when we have the meetings, it's very specific how we run them. We have what we call breakthrough sessions. So we have 3 breakthrough sessions, and then in the whole room, everybody who's a speaker gets the opportunity to share what they speak about, and everybody who is an event host gets the opportunity. And every time we run the meeting, and we've been doing it for a year now, those what I call the ding, ding, ding moments are great. So Steve and I afterwards could literally conquer the world, because seeing people make those connections and seeing those aha moments that people have, oh, wow, didn't even think of that. Wow, I'm in Greece and I didn't think that I could. Of course, I can talk to somebody in the US and be on their podcast. And so seeing those possibilities opening is just magic. I just love that. If some, people make those great connections after each meeting and think, explore new possibilities, then our work is done. I just love that.
No, I love that story or your rendition of things, because it's, you and I were talking before we hit record, and we were talking about your voiceover work. And, I knew voiceover people here and there, but I'd always thought if you needed that sort of work done, you needed to go to New York or LA, because that's where people were, that's where they would congregate. And there's probably some truth to that, but there are people who are, wherever you're at in Norway, right? I mean, there are people out there. And I think it's true of a lot of things. I think what technology is going to be doing for connecting is it's taking away the choke points. For example, if you had a great idea, okay, you need to talk with somebody, again, in New York or Paris or, some of the major hubs where you get a lot of the concentration of whatever it is. And now it's like you can go right around that. And the person in Greece can say, you know what, I can talk to the person in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, because that's who I ultimately need to be at. I don't need to go through these middle people. I can just go ahead and do it. I can find these people. And, I just think we're going to solve so many problems. I mean, it's nice to be able to get business, but to be able to solve problems and put two and two together. And, I'm working on issue A and this person's working on issue B, and these are kind of unrelated, but if we combine them, then it solves this particular problem. And I haven't even come up with a good example for that yet, but it just seems to me it's only a matter of time where, these ideas start to come together and, oh, well, how silly of us, this just works.
So many times we think that what we talk about is just relevant to where we are. But, so many people talk on different topics that are relevant the world over, that people want to learn and share. And, for me, it's an utter privilege to be able to press a button. And you and I are speaking today. How amazing! If you think about in years gone by, we sent people off to war and we never knew when we would see them. When I lived in England and so many people emigrated to Australia, that phone call to auntie, your auntie is like, be on the phone to auntie. You've got 10 seconds because it's going to cost a fortune to say hello, how are you, and this is how I'm doing at school. Now we press a button. And not only can we meet one person, we can meet lots of people. We can have them in lots of different rooms, and that's just a privilege. That gives me goosebumps every time I think of that. That we can. What a privilege it is.
Well, and it's virtually free. Okay, I've got a Zoom account. I know I pay, but I have unlimited use. So whether I use it once or I use it 1,000 times over the course of the year, it's costing me the same. So I almost look at it as free. Whereas I'm old enough to remember, as you indicated, long distance charges.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember once getting a letter from my dad saying, you owe me $35, because I was off at college calling my girlfriend all the time. And it was he figured out it was cost $35. This is in the 80s. So it was a decent amount of money. But now we don't worry about those things. If you and I talk on the phone 30 years ago, it would be a quick conversation. Jenny, how you doing? Great. Talk to you later.
Bye.
So we couldn't solve anything, right? And we couldn't develop a relationship. It would be all very surface level sorts of things,
Yeah. And also, a lot of people say, oh, it's not like meeting somebody in person. I actually went to a meeting a couple of years ago, actually during the pandemic, and there was a lady there that actually said, she was speaking to this networking group, and she said, let's face it, you can't build trusting relationships with people unless you meet them in person. And there is that moment, I could see myself in the Zoom window with my chin literally on my chest, and the opportunity to say something, because it was a Q&A session, had passed, because I was so, I don't know whether the word is probably appalled, but I was so shocked. And actually, I was the speaker the month afterwards, so I was a little bit naughty, actually. And I actually started speaking about my voiceover career and said, in the 10 years I've been a voiceover, I have worked for, at that time, it was over 60 countries, and 99.9% of the people that I have worked for, I have never, ever met. I've met them online, and of course now we meet on Zoom, and I know about their weddings, their children, their pets, their whatever, because we have a long-lasting relationship. But, we at that point, we hadn't seen each other, and I could walk past him in the street, and it's only if I opened my mouth, I go, oh, that's that lady that narrates our e-learning courses. That's Jenny Erickson. So, of course, you can build wonderful relationships with people online, but now we can do both. So choose what you do. And in a world where we're thinking about, our carbon footfall and stuff, we could either go off to a meeting and park the car and all that kind of thing, or we could meet somebody quickly online, or if they're not in our vicinity, we can meet them online. And how fantastic is that?
I use it locally. I had somebody reach out to me. I would love to have a cup of coffee with you. I need some help. Fine. I'm happy to help you. Do you mind if we do it over Zoom? Because in 20 minutes, 30 minutes, I can help you. I don't have to spend the hour leaving my office, driving there, and then getting back into the flow of work. I can just put my pen down, hit Zoom, and we're off and we're talking. And I mean, there are people here in town that I've met over Zoom that I haven't met in person yet. And it's perfectly fine.
Absolutely. It's so funny. A very lovely lady in the US over where you are actually introduced, she connected me to a lovely lady. She's, she introduced us on LinkedIn. I think the two of you will absolutely get on. This lady it happens to be Norwegian. This lady happens to live in the town just down the road. So an American lady introduced me that somebody that lives 15 minutes down the road, which is, I think is funny. And we actually met in person and had a cup of coffee. But how delightful, those 6 degrees of separation, they're now less than 2. We're more connected than ever. And we can extend that networking that, globally and make global connections. And that just blows my mind. I think that's incredible.
Do you find that there are certain parts of the world that you feel less connected to than others? I have my own answer, but I'm curious as to yours.
Good question. Predominantly if I think about Event Raptor clients, we tend to be with people in the US and Canada and the UK and Australia, South Africa, certain European countries, although, last week with Own Your Stage, we had a wonderful European speaker. I don't know really, I guess, especially with voiceover, I've, as I say, I've narrated for about 65, 66 different countries. So I'm not seeing any. There are countries out there that I haven't made a connection
Well, I
with.
think there are the obvious, the communist countries. You have Russia, you have China, and I'm sure there are people there that are ready, willing, but unable to do so. I think I introduced you to Marilise, who's in Estonia, which is, she grew up in communist Soviet Union. But I've struggled to make connection with people in South America for whatever reason. It's the oddest thing. Mexico, Brazil, Venezuela, Chile. I know more people in India, tenfold more than I do in those countries down there, and I don't really know why. And I've thought about, okay, I need to just make a concerted effort to make inroads into that continent, and it's never really gone anywhere. And you get caught up with, hey, somebody in Spain who introduced you to somebody in, wherever, in the EU. And you're so busy talking with those sorts of people. Obviously, the US and Canada, I talk to a lot of people, but it's just kind of interesting.
We have, we've had people from all over at Speaker Connections. We have, Japan, Australia, New Zealand turn up. We've had some Eastern European countries. I've narrated actually for both Russia and China. But in terms of events, yes, you're absolutely right. That's food for thought. That's a good one.
I don't know why. I don't know why. Somebody listening might chime in, or I'll come up with the answer. And
a Scooby-Doo moment. I have to figure out.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure they're perfectly nice people. That's the one thing I have found, is that people are people. Yeah. You love your kids like I love my kids, right? You're proud of your kids like I'm proud of my kids, and they drive you batshit crazy from time to time, but they're good kids. And I just noticed that's kind of a universal theme, and we all just want good lives. And I think that's one of the wonderful things of meeting other people. You just start to realize, okay, it's people, I'm not saying there aren't sinister people out there, but it's not entire countries, right? The people in the countries are just good people. So, maybe it can help us long-term with world peace and things along like those lines. Well, let's shift gears here. We could go on and on talking about this. Event Raptor, what types of people would you like to be connected to? Or the name of your business is, your voiceover is Lovely Voice. So.
In terms of Lovely Voice, let's start with voiceover.
Okay.
As you can hear, it's a British voice, and the thing is also, the wonderful thing is when we get to meet people, we're not all things to all people, and I'm sure you agree with that. So
sure.
If you want me to do an American voiceover, I'm not your gal. You can hear from the voice. I'm clearly not so. But if you want me to narrate for an American company with my British voice, of course, I will. So for me, with voiceover, I guess my wheelhouse is e-learning stuff. I love narrating e-learning stuff, and actually, funnily enough, saying what you were saying, the company I'm working for is based in Argentina. There we go.
Okay, good.
So I just thought that's. But for us, in terms of Event Raptor, we're wanting to help people that want to run their own events and feel challenged by the moving parts. When somebody wants to put on a webinar, maybe, even people who want to bring groups together, maybe a team of people together, and they want to be able to have speakers, and they want all the stats behind it about how long people stayed, and all the information at the touch of a button. People that are open to the idea of how you can have online meetings purposefully. For example, something we teach is how to monetize your online meetings. So many people go, well, I had a 3-day event. It was jolly nice. I didn't make any money out of it. And that was 3 days that I took to have an event. And because I've manually done it, it took me hours and hours to do. We want to say, well, it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to take you hours to sort it out in the first place. And also you can monetize your events as well. So people that are receptive to that idea, and recently we extended the business, and we've now got a CRM system, which was called CRM Raptor. We're quite fond of the word Raptor, obviously. So people we work with, they're coaches and the speakers and they're course creators, because they can house their courses with us too. So we want to work with people that really want to be more visible, to get out there. We help people find speaking opportunities. We've got a speaker directory. You can have a profile in our speaker directory for nothing. You can come to Speaker Connections for nothing. We really want people to realize that their message is important. People around the world would like to hear it. And if we can facilitate them speaking more or running their own meetings, then that's what we're about.
Okay. Can people get a hold of you, I guess, through eventraptor.com? Would that be?
They can indeed.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Event Raptor, not Event Rapture. Somebody said Event Rapture the other day, which had a whole different connotation.
Sure.
It was very nice. I did like to correct her, but it was kind of like, no, Event Raptor. So people ask actually why it's Event Raptor. Why did you call it that? It's a dinosaur, as you can probably see from us. I've got a dinosaur behind me. But raptors are fast. They're fast and they're agile. That's what we're offering. Being fast and agile and nimble, and cutting out all the clutter and really honing in and being able to sort things out quickly.
And scary good at what you do.
Well, thank you very much. We like to.
Well, thank you for being on the program today.
Oh, well, thank you very, very much for having me. It's been delightful.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is a copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.